What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Slate of Gridiron Ratings production. Happy to be with you guys today. It's just going to be me going through a little bit of Week 3 DFS. Jeff, unfortunately, could not make it tonight. Being a good family man, got his son's birthday. So, not going to miss him too much. Just happy to be with you guys here. I'm just finishing up some share outs over here on my phone to my right. And then we will get started. We got a lot to cover. I'm trying to make it pretty quick today because here we go. If you're like me, been catching up on some college football. A lot of good games today. I watched a lot of the Baylor game today. Iowa State. Sorry about my buddy Jeff, Iowa State guy. But we're going to get right into it. Over here on the Gridiron's Ratings, you can catch us on our webpage, or I have it shared on my Twitter account. You can follow me at Fantasy Reserve. We have our stacks of the week. I usually go through and look at about 7 or 8 teams that I think provides the most upside for our draft week or for your draft lineups, especially for those big like GPP lineups where you're going to be having 20, 50 lineups per person. So that's what we have here. Some facts that Jeff wanted me to share on his behalf and something interesting that we found. So for this week, there were 3 times as many players over 7,000 in salary than there were last week. And I think you're going to see that a lot today. There's actually going to be something at the end where I call the value breakouts. I think there are players that are currently undervalued that I think coming into next week, we're going to be seeing a big bump in their salaries. And one of them right here on this first page is Stephon Diggs. I think he is severely undervalued. If you look at what he is currently, there are 4 other wide receivers priced ahead of him, despite him being the true wide receiver 1 already on the season. Some massive games in week 1 and week 2. We all saw that one last week against the Titans. Yeah, so looking at the stacks of the week, we have the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. It's a very high over-under when this was last updated, 52.5 points. And the Bills are favored very mightily, and 29.25 points implied total, meaning Vegas fully expects the Buffalo Bills to score at least 4 touchdowns. I don't know how you can, try to get away from the stack because, like I said, Josh Allen, 8,200, he's the clear quarterback 1 on the season, the clear quarterback 1 of this DraftKings lineup. But you got to look at the rest of the wide receivers. Cooper Kupp right now is priced at 9,900, Justin Jefferson 9,300, Devontae Adams 84, and Jamar Chase at 81. So with Stephon Diggs being priced at 7,700, he's the type of guy I'm going to be trying to get in all of my lineups because this is probably the lowest he's ever going to be the rest of the season. And against the Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins offense that we just watched last week, put on a spectacular show with Tua throwing for over 400 yards, and of course Waddle and Hill doing what they can. Despite the Bills defense, I think there's going to be a lot of points put up. I still expect the Buffalo Bills to cover. I think the last time I checked, they were favored by 6.5. The line's been moving a little bit. But if you look at our stack here, I like Josh Allen. I like Stephon Diggs. I even like the Bills defense. They just get after the quarterback. While I do expect this to be a bit of a high-scoring game, I think there will be opportunities for this Bills defense to create some turnovers. You have Von Miller and Oliver down there, and they're doing just fantastic. Because that whole Von Miller being immersed in this defense has just allowed it to take off to another level. It's like he showed up and everyone figured out how to pass rush, and they've been nothing but great the last 2 weeks. But the reason you need this defense, if you want that 3-way stack, is the pricing of these offensive players. You have Jalen Waddle here at 6,800. You have Tyreek Hill at 7,600. It is very hard to get these players in these lineups with the amount of salary it's going to cost you. If you wanted to do Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and run it back with Jalen Waddle, even with the Bills defense at 3,500, this is more of me showing you than encouraging you because there's some other defenses I do like. You're only going to have an average remaining of 47.60, and that's with a defense at 3,500. If you're going to want this game, you're going to have to figure out how to be creative with your salary, and I'm excited to share that with you at the end of some of the players that we look at as our value breakouts. So Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, I'm still putting that stack in my lineup, especially in those big tournaments, because I think there's a really realistic chance that they both end up top 3 at their position. Going to our next stack of the week, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at the New York Jets, what you're going to see this week is there's going to be a lot of road favorites. And it's actually pretty insane. You have the Buffalo Bills on the road, you have the Baltimore Ravens on the road, now you have the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. There's a lot of teams that are on the road this year that are favored and favored by quite a bit. And the Buffalo Bill or the Cincinnati Bengals are another team that are heavily favored on the road. I think this has to be a bounce back week. The Jets haven't shown anything as far as pass rush. They were very good at creating one of those, once in a million chance for comebacks last week against the Browns. So I'll give credit to the Jets. But this one, compared to the Buffalo Bills, allows you for a lot more opportunity to actually get those players in your starting lineup. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, because Joe Burrow has been off to a slow start, he is very underpriced currently at 6,600 against the Jets defense that, week one got torched by the Ravens. Week two, even against the Browns, allowed a lot on the ground. I think just being able to put Joe Burrow in your lineup with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and still being able to run it back with Tyler Conklin, who has been very good since CJ Uzomah has been injured. And I've been a little hesitant to put him in a lot of my lineups, but I think this week, when you're looking for players and values at positions, Tyler Conklin at 3,800, I think you just have to take the opportunity there, especially if you want, passing. You want the passing volume in this game because Joe Flacco leads the league after 2 weeks in pass attempts. So while those may not be as valuable as some of these other players, I still think having him available in your lineup because he has a touchdown opportunity is way worth the cost of the 3,800. Just wanted to show from Daddy here with the Netflix picture. Love it. Should I trade T. Higgins for Miles Sanders? My other running backs are A.J. Dillon and James Conner. Conner has the ankle injury. Yeah. That's a tough one because T. Higgins is, the Bengals' identity is still going to be through Joe Burrow in this passing offense. And I'm hesitant because of where you probably drafted T. Higgins and the expectation and Miles Sanders. But unfortunately, looking at your other running backs, A.J. Dillon, Debo Devontae Smith, and on my bench is DJ Chark. Yeah, if you're only having to start 2 wide receivers and DJ Chark is on your bench, man, yeah, I don't think I would trade T. Higgins for Miles Sanders straight up because I still think T. Higgins is going to represent a lot of top 15, top 12 upside for the wide receiver position. And as much as I love Miles Sanders, we're going to talk about him later. He's pretty much like one of my top 5 running backs, and I'm starting this week because of his efficiency. He's just not going to score the touchdowns. And so basically for me, T. Higgins and Miles Sanders have about the same floor, where if they don't get the touchdowns, they're going to put up about the same amount of points because you have Jalen Hurts, who had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. Those could have went to Miles Sanders, but they're not going to. And then you have, Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott both scoring touchdowns in week 1 and then just being there to siphon off, work from Miles Sanders. I will admit, with the James Conner injury, it seems like once he gets hurt, he just continues to stay hurt. So I think I would be looking for more running back depth, especially with A.J. Dillon. He may be a little inconsistent as he's still trying to be part of this offense with Aaron Jones. But no, I think I would still rather have T. Higgins over Miles Sanders at this moment. Yeah, and that's tough because I like Miles Sanders. He's going to be a very efficient running back. But what happens if he has a few weeks where he's just not efficient, right? I think that's what you have to go to is if you look at his yards per carry, and I can pull it up real quick because we are going to talk about him later just to kind of finish with this conversation. He's 30 attempts for 176 yards over the course of 2 weeks. And last week he didn't have a touchdown, only had 11.6 points. So I think 11.6 points is very much in the range for T. Higgins, especially in a half PPR or full PPR league, but you're just on a better offense for receptions versus Miles Sanders, who can lose carries, obviously, to Jalen Hurts, but to those other running backs. So, like I said here, yeah, I love Joe Burrow this week. Jamar Chase, I think they have to bounce back. You have to be able to kind of prove that. And then Garrett Wilson, I like the running back with Garrett Wilson. I'm kind of in. I was full on Elijah Moore or not at all on this Jets offense, but they are having to throw the ball. And with Joe Flacco being in there which Garrett Wilson has said, he throws a better wide receiver friendly ball, which he does. He's been in the league for many, many years. He knows how to place, the ball for these wide receivers to make a play. And I've actually been impressed with Joe Flacco. He's done everything he's been asked, especially with, he's like 34, 35, 36 years old. So I like with this opportunity here in this game, which I think could potentially hit the over because the Bengals defense hasn't shown to be very good. And obviously the Bengals have a good offense that can put up a lot of points. Going on here to the Cardinals, again, this is the game that I'm really going for. Because I think Kyler Murray and Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz, I think they're still undervalued because of the slow start, and I have to think that they're going to turn it around. The Rams haven't really shown, especially, they lost week 1 to the Bills, but it's the Bills. Well, then week 2, you almost allow a comeback to the Falcons. So I think they're vulnerable on the defensive side. I think the Cardinals understand now, like, hey, what's working, what's not working, and they're going to figure it out. So this is really my favorite stack of the week, especially if you're able to do the mini stack and run it back with Cooper Kupp, with Kyler Murray and Zach Ertz and Cooper Kupp, and still have a little bit. 4,700 is actually, a lot for 3 players available remaining. But I think there's other positional values that you can still put together a full lineup. But if you want to go back with Allen Robinson, if you think he's finally going to have, he had almost an opportunity to catch another touchdown last week, could have had a really big game, and then still put Zach Ertz in the lineup. I do like that opportunity for this 3-man stack. It's one of the few 3-man stacks that I like for the week with Allen Robinson. The Rams are favored in this game by about 3.5 points, I believe. And then hopefully we get Hollywood Brown finally. He was way more efficient and had a lot more bigger games when he was with the Ravens, and you're kind of expecting that, especially in this offense with Kyler Murray. And I'm hoping this is the week that we get that for him. I put this lineup together under the assumption that Justin Herbert, who was practicing earlier in the week, got some reports yesterday. The line moved from -7 in favor of the Chargers to -3.5. So Vegas is, if they think Herbert's not going to play, they're at least thinking this injury is definitely affecting him. So I think you have to just be wary of this. I do like Mike Williams this week. I think Gerald Everett, if Justin Herbert was healthy, is still a phenomenal start. I am in on James Robinson and Travis Etienne. James Robinson just continues to get all of the carries and all of the opportunity in these games, despite not being very efficient. But he's doing exactly what he's been asked. And looking at his stats right here that I'm pulling up, 17.9 points per game on DraftKings scoring. Last week, 23 rush attempts for only 64 yards, but he's getting those opportunities. And we're seeing the same thing in the Los Angeles for the Rams, that despite Cam Akers not being very good or very efficient on the ground, he's getting a lot of opportunities despite Darrell Henderson being the better running back. And maybe that's how we're going to feel about Travis Etienne later in the year, where he's the more explosive, efficient running back. But until then, James Robinson seems to have a hold on this backfield. So if it comes out that Herbert's good to go, I would still be wary about playing in this because some of the pieces are expensive. But someone like Gerald Everett or even Austin Eckler could see a bump in production because they're going to have to rely on the short passing game a little more. Here we have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Indianapolis Colts. It's another high over-under 50 with the implied total of almost 4 touchdowns for the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelce, man, his pricing finally caught up with him, and it's going to cost you to get him in your lineup. So I still like Travis Kelce as a solo play. I think there's just there's a high probability of him finishing as a top 3 tight end and even the number 1 overall tight end more often than not. Players like Ashton Doolin, I actually meant to, just kind of drop that our favorite of the week down to Travis Kelce, because I think we're going to see Michael Pittman this week, and we are not sure which Chiefs wide receiver we're going to be expected to, catch it. Juju was there week 1, week 2. It was, really nobody. It was, MBS is not playable at this point. Mecole Hardman, Sky Moore is, not part of this offense. So I think Juju is still kind of the one that you're going to want in your lineups, especially at 5,500. He's kind of right there in the middle at the average. but could have a really good game against the Colts, who should be better this week with Michael Pittman and should be more committed to the ground game. So maybe we'll see a little bit more of a back and forth scoring matchup this week. Going here to the Philadelphia Eagles, like I said, my one-off down here, Miles Sanders at 5,500. That is just a great value. He has been so efficient on the ground, playing the Commanders, who have been getting torched the last couple of weeks. Obviously you can remember what DeAndre Swift did to them. And I think there is a big opportunity for this Eagles team to kind of take over, like prove that they are taking over this division, because the Commanders at 1-1, they have been very surprising, I think, because I don't think anyone expected them to be able to keep up. I think they expected their defense to be a little bit better, their offense a little bit worse than they've been performing. But there's a lot of good wide receivers options on that Commanders team that you can pair with this Jalen Hurts stack. And so besides this one-off down here where I'm putting Miles Sanders in a lot of my lineups, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, and my man Curtis Samuel, who is still underpriced at 5,100, he is getting all the opportunity. He's going to show up a little later, and we'll talk about him there. Dallas Goedert, I think, is going at the end of the year. We're going to be kind of viewing him into this top 5 consistency of tight ends, because Travis Kelce's been injured. Darren Waller's been inconsistent. It's Travis Kelce and who else? Kyle Pitts is, nowhere to be found as of yet through 2 weeks. So I do like the mini stack here a lot. And then even A.J. Brown with Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson is currently the cheapest of the Commanders wide receivers, but there is still a lot of opportunity for him because he just continues to catch touchdowns. This may be his down week. It may not be, but I still like Curtis Samuel, and Terry McLaurin is kind of unplayable when compared to the other 2 wide receivers until he kind of proves that he's the alpha on this offense. Back here to the Rams-Cardinals game. Sorry, that slide was not back-to-back. There are some opportunities here, and I think the good one is the Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Zach Ertz game. Darrell Henderson is kind of the one-off down there, but him and Cam Akers are just eating into their opportunities, so it's going to be coming down to touchdowns and how much we expect this game. I do like the over for this one. Being able to get Cooper Kupp in your lineup and then running it back with Zach Ertz, who has been very, very good despite being coming off of an injury from training camp, into week 1, garbage timed it up. And then week 2 last year when they were coming back against the Raiders, they did very well. So I like the opportunity to kind of put them in your lineups if you can. If not, you still have Allen Robinson and Tyler Higbee, who is still another very good tight end, catching a lot of passes, running it back with Hollywood Brown. And you can see here that you would have about a $600 remaining difference on remaining players if you decide to go that route. Here we have the stacks of the week for the Minnesota Vikings, who I think are going to have a very good comeback. They looked awful, but I think that's just primetime Kirk. I don't know what it is. They had multiple opportunities in that game. 3 red zone interceptions for Kirk Cousins to come back and put it together to make a comeback, to make this game competitive and can keep increasing fantasy points. But unfortunately, they did not. I like Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and running it back with TJ Hawkinson, who has been underwhelming at this point, but has a really good matchup against his Vikings defense. If you want to kind of run it with Irv Smith, I love that as well. And then still being able to get DeAndre Swift, Cousins, Jefferson, and that kind of 3-man stack, and still having 4,700 remaining. Like I said, this week we have a lot of very high price players, 3 times the amount of over 7,000. So if you're wanting these big names in your lineup, you're going to have to kind of spend up in certain positions. And that is going to, and then my one-off here is Irv Smith at 3,100. I think he's still underpriced. He could have had a big touchdown that he dropped last week. He's finally getting involved into this offense. And then before we get into my last slide here, just kind of go over what I view as our breakout values. It will be up on the page here later this evening. You'll be able to view it tomorrow. But at quarterback, I'm going back with Matthew Stafford. He's 6,500, the quarterback 9 on the week, and his points per game is at 15.8 points per game. I think this has been a little underwhelming, especially because how good that Bills defense was and what he was kind of, he didn't really have to do much at the end of that Falcons game, but with this Arizona team, who is a second half team, is what they're showing, he's going to have opportunity to hit that 300-yard, 3-touchdown mark, especially with the kind of inconsistencies from this backfield. Another quarterback I like a lot this week, if you're trying to save up in that position, is Jared Goff. He's playing the Vikings. The week 1, they did their thing against Green Bay, but I think Green Bay kind of got in their own way, just like they did last year in week 1 against the Saints. And now you have the Vikings who got torched by Jalen Hurts. This Lions offense, I think they still don't have that it factor of like winning 9, 10, 11 games, but they have the it factor of putting up a lot of points. So not scared at all of Jared Goff against the Vikings, especially at quarterback 15, where he's averaging 21.3 points per game. He's going to put up a lot of garbage time points. At the running back position, I like David Montgomery against Houston. The Bears, it should be a low-scoring game. The under's very likely to be the favorite on that. So you can expect a lot of running still, despite the fact that they need to get Justin Fields more involved in this offense. David Montgomery has an opportunity for a 2-touchdown game, which is what you're really looking for those running backs. He's going to be involved. He's still priced at 5,900, which is the running back 16, and at 13.3 points per game. From a bad week one, whenever they had that rain game against the 49ers, I think this is the week that it finally takes off. Miles Sanders against the Commanders is another one I really like this week. He's 5,500, which is tied for running back 22 at 15.1 points per game, despite only having one touchdown through 2 weeks, which has kind of been his issue. I think he has a really good opportunity. What you want from Miles Sanders is let him be very efficient throughout the game. Don't break off a big run until the end. You want that. You want this game to be competitive, and then in the fourth quarter, it's a 30-yard touchdown run. Because throughout the game, he's going to be efficient. It's just when he gets down to the red zone, when Jalen Hurts takes over in that role on the goal line. So if he can break off one of those 30-yard runs, late in the game, that's what's really going to save you. And I think he has a good opportunity for that this week. And then my last one is Travis Etienne against the Chargers. The Chargers have a very stout defense. It's going to be hard, even with Justin Herbert out there, for the Jaguars to keep up, or even with Justin Herbert being limited, for them to keep up. He's still priced at 5,400, which running back 25. If you're going to pair him with some of these other players like DeAndre Swift, this 3-man stack for the Vikings, and you want to get a cheaper running back, 5,400 for DeAndre Swift is where you're going to be, or for Travis Etienne is where you're going to be looking at. At 8.4 points per game, he's still very underwhelming, but I think he's going to have a breakout game, and it's going to be the week that you're going to want him in your lineup when no one else is. Wide receivers, I have Rashad Bateman against New England. Wide receiver 27 at 5,700 at 18.9 points per game. He's been very efficient on limited targets, but this is what we've seen from this offense and what we saw from Hollywood Brown. So I don't think you need to be wary about his lack of involvement in the offense. If he gets 6 targets, there's a very good chance that he's going to break off a big one. And then Greg Dortch for the Arizona Cardinals. He's priced at 4,300 at wide receiver 59. I'm going to continue to put his name in there until Rondale Moore comes back, because he is vital for this offense. It's Hollywood Brown. He's running the second most snaps behind Hollywood Brown. It's Zach Ertz at tight end. And then someone else has to pick up the slack when those guys are being covered. AJ Green is non-existent. So at 14.4 points per game at 4,300, this is where you can make some of that salary to be able to get some of these higher priced guys in your lineup. So I'm going to continue putting him into my lineups when available. And then Curtis Samuel against Philadelphia. He is leading the whole, the offensive weapons at the wide receiver position, in targets and opportunities. I think just with the way that this offense needs Curtis Samuel to be valuable, despite the fact that, Terry McLaurin got the big payday, and then they had Jahan Dotson, who is the first-round pick catching the touchdowns. They're going to need Curtis Samuel to be involved. So he's my third of the wide receiver positions at 5,100, tied for wide receiver 39 in pricing, but he's averaging 21.6 points per game. And so until he proves that maybe, he's going to be taking a backseat to some of these other guys, I think you just continue to put them in their lineup, especially against a Philadelphia team that should be up. And the Commanders have shown that they can put up a lot of points through the air if they're down. And then last but not least, against the tight end position here, we have Hayden Hurst, who has kind of been the safety valve for Joe Burrow, because he is getting a lot of pressure in his face, although I expect him to kind of take care of the Jets pretty easily this week and finally have this comeback week that shows that there's still an opportunity for playoff contention. Hayden Hurst is a guy that you can trust in a tight end landscape that is very hurting. There's 5 or 6 tight ends every week amongst these, 20, 24 teams, 26 teams in the Sunday window for you to actually be able to put into your lineup. And he's priced at tight end 12 at 3,900. And then last, it's Evan Ingram against the Chargers. Evan Ingram was finally involved a lot last week. 9.2 points per game at 3,700 at tight end 15. These are where you're able, if you can't get Travis Kelce into your lineup, some of these other big tight ends, these are where you can make up your values. And then last year, this will be updated as well later this evening. I have my NFL bets. You can see here now we're 11-8. We were able to, pick the Browns 4.5. Something that I've changed. I still like the Chiefs over the Colts. The Chiefs are currently at -6. I still like that. Ravens at the Patriots, last I checked, was -2.5, but it's going to be fluctuating between -2.5 and -3. I still like the Ravens over the Patriots. And then the Eagles over 47 points. I still like that as well. Not parlaying this. What I am parlaying is the Chiefs and the Ravens, as well as the Rams Cardinals over at 48 points. This is actually dropped as well, and this will be updated very soon. I like the Packers to beat the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are going to be hurting on offense. While the Buccaneers defense is still very good, we saw what with a lack of offensive weapons and with Leonard Fournette being hurt, hamstring issue, questionable, he'll probably play. But I think the Packers can keep up, and we're going to be expecting this Packers offense that has had a very good week 2 to be a lot more efficient than the New Orleans Saints, who were still very much in that game last week. And then the Jaguars at the Chargers went ahead and pivoted. I'm going to take the Falcons money line at Seattle. I know that Seattle had a very good week 1 against the Denver Broncos, but couldn't do anything last week against the Seahawks. And we're going to see, what this Falcons defense can do. They were able to make some plays against the Rams and Matthew Stafford. And if they're able to make 1 or 2 plays against this Seahawks offense that is really struggling, I think they have a big opportunity to kind of make a quote unquote upset, even though it's even money both ways. I think the Falcons have a good opportunity to beat the Seahawks. I still like the Broncos money line at home. I think the fans are going to finally show up for this big Sunday night game. I think the coaching staff is going to get it back together. My buddy Jeff may disagree with me, as he is a 49ers fan and I am a Broncos fan. But I still think this is a good opportunity, especially at now the odds have moved to plus 110. And then the Cowboys at the Giants. This Cowboys defense, I think, is legit. And something we talked about in DFS is you're going to want to start your top tier defensive teams, despite the fact for bad matchups. This is a really good matchup for the Cowboys. I think there's a very good opportunity for a defensive touchdown, even so much that sportsbooks have it at plus 200 for a defensive touchdown. So they think there are opportunities for a big defensive swing at some point in this game. I think that comes from the Cowboys, despite the fact that the Giants are at home and are currently favored by, I think, 1 or 2 points. Hopefully you guys get something from this and you have a really good week 3. Hopefully you're enjoying the weekend. There's a lot of really good games, a lot of heavy road favorites tomorrow. So there is an opportunity for a lot of upsets. And hopefully Jeff will be able to join me next week and we will get back on the grind here and continue to put out content for you guys and just to do our best. And, at the end of the day, it's here for fun, but here to try to win some money and just to continue to enjoy the football season. We're already all on our way to week 3. Before we know it, we'll be signing off for week 17 and getting into the playoffs. So hopefully you guys had a good weekend and we'll continue. And before I go, I just want to say, thank you guys for the content. We definitely enjoy the questions. We definitely enjoy you guys, giving feedback because there's nothing else, we enjoy than, putting out content for everyone. So you guys have a good weekend and good luck.